Advice would be use money to allow you to do those things and work hard to make more money, but use it also to help other people.
And just quickly, you are a highly successful investor, so you invested in so many different companies. What do you look for before you invest in a business?
Business is all about people. So the right people can make an average idea work. The wrong people can mess up a good idea. So management is a real skill. It's underestimated. It's not as easy as it looks. A lot of people, including me, can start a business and think we're going to be good at it. But why? Why would we be a good manager? And it's very hard to learn to be a good manager because there's so much randomness. So you can have a good idea, you can exercise it well, but just external events don't go your way.
So Richard Fraleigh, it's a real honour to have you on the platform. You are a former Dragon on Dragon's Den, and you're also a very successful investor. You've invested in several companies, and you're very influential in the world of business. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, that's very kind.
So you were born in Australia and you grew up in foster care. And then following that, you then studied at university and then progressed more into business. What sparked your entrepreneurial drive?
Well, I'm not sure what an entrepreneurial drive is particularly. I got a lot of drive, whether it's to be an entrepreneur or anything else. I think if you grow up in a disadvantaged childhood, you have a lot to prove. I went through special learning classes and being told that I was backward, and so no one ever thought I would achieve much. And I know a lot of people have been in that situation. And one thing that does is give you a point to prove. So I've always had a lot of drive, no matter what I've been doing. The second part of my career, well, really, I started as working in the Central Bank of Australia. So when I went through the care system, you leave at 18. I didn't have any money or any parents or any support really, and so I had to, even though I got good marks at school, I had to go to night school. I had to do university at night. All my friends from school, they had parents, so they went to university. I had to get a job during the day and work at night. It was the hardest I've ever worked for a couple of years. And then eventually I got a scholarship from the Central Bank because I did economics and maths. So eventually I got a scholarship from the Central Bank to go to full-time university, which is very lucrative, only given out 3 in the country, I think. So then I was paid full-time salary to go to university. So I suddenly went from having very tough, working really long hours to work and then study at night to being able to go to university and having my costs paid for me. Yeah.
And you were highly successful in the world of banking, but then you decided to leave the banking world to become an entrepreneur. Why did you decide to make that transition?
Well, I left the world of finance. I was in it for about 14 years, but I didn't want to. I made a bunch of money. I ran a fund in Bermuda. I didn't want to. I didn't see myself working in finance forever. It involves a lot of looking at screens and looking at economic statistics and reading about politics and all that, and so I didn't want to do it forever. If I'd probably stayed in that world, I'd be a billionaire by now, running hedge funds and things like that. But I wanted to have a varied life, so I wanted to do something different. So after 14 years of looking at data, I decided to leave and do something else. Might have been a silly decision, but since then, going the world of business has been a hell of a lot of fun.
And it's incredible, your story, because you actually retired early. So you decided to make the decision to retire early. And there's many entrepreneurs that when they make their first 10 million, they want to make 100, and then when they make 100, they want to make $1 billion. Why do you decide to kind of withdraw from that?
Well, when I left the care system, I didn't have any money, so I made sort of millions from my hedge fund days or investment banking days. So that to me was a hell of a lot of money. And coming from where I came from and my brothers and sisters, I didn't really see the need for more money. So I moved to Monte Carlo at the age of 34, and I realised I wasn't so wealthy after all, but certainly enough to live comfortably. So I was driven by different things, and finance is fairly one-directional. Business is obviously very varied and much more involves people, much more, and I like the people side, and I like you can maybe you say you're contributing more by doing business than you might be by doing finance.
And I was also reading your interview with the Times when you discussed your approach to money, and you actually talked about it's a much better slave than it is a master, and I found that quite powerful. What was the inspiration behind that statement?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's an original statement, but yes, money's better off being your slave than, you don't want to be I read a very good book once, which about happiness, Happiness by Design, it's called, and I really appreciated this thing about purpose and pleasure and getting a balance between the two. So, it's money gives you freedom. So I've had the freedom to start businesses. If I see an idea I like, I can put money into it, and that's a real freedom. I can work the hours I like. So that's where money is a good slave. But if you're only obsessed with making money and you're overweight, or you've got a bad, you're giving up things in your private life, or whatever else, then you're over obsessing with money. So it's a balance between purpose and pleasure. So you want to have some pleasure and you want to have some purpose, but if it's all purpose, when do you cash your chips? When do you go and sit in the sun? So I play a lot of tennis, I play competitive chess still. So when do you get to do those fun things and even spend time with your family and your friends? So use money. My advice would be use money to allow you to do those things and work hard to make more money, but use it also to help other people.
And just quickly, you are a highly successful investor, so invested in so many different companies. What do you look for before you invest in a business?
Business is all about people. So the right people can make an average idea work. The wrong people can mess up a good idea. So management is a real skill. It's underestimated. It's not as easy as it looks. A lot of people, including me, can start a business and think we're going to be good at it. But why? Why would we be a good manager? And it's very hard to learn to be a good manager because there's so much randomness. So you can have a good idea, you can exercise it well, but just external events don't go your way. So what do you learn out of that? And I've backed, say for example, I've backed 7 or 8 semiconductor companies. A couple have worked and the others failed. It's very hard for me to really tell you what we did right and what we did wrong. It's not clear cut. So it's quite hard to learn to be a good manager. So management is the skill, the rare skill.
Thank you so much. And even following on just quickly from that, we're just going to touch upon chess.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a competitive chess player.
Yeah.
First question I want to ask you is, how did you actually get involved in chess and why did you like it so much?
Yeah, well, coming through the care system, I was very introverted. I didn't speak very much until I was about 10 or 11. I could speak, but I just didn't feel very comfortable looking people in the eye and speaking. So as a consequence of that, I was quite introverted, nerdy, and I read a lot of fiction and non-fiction, but I also loved puzzles. And just all sorts of puzzles and maths, but chess was the ultimate puzzle. And I started quite late for a competitive chess player. I started when I was like 12 or 13, but I got to a level when I was 15 pretty quickly, where I was competing with the adults. I beat the state champion when I was 15, I think. I haven't improved much since then. I sort of got to that level. If you really want to get good, you've got to start young. But I got to a point when I was 18, so it was a puzzle. And I was invited to a chess club, and I went along and I started winning some games, and it was something I was good at. And we all love things we're good at. so then I started playing more, and I started playing in competitions, and then I made friends, and then I started traveling around Australia, playing in different sort of tournaments in different cities and small places in the country. And then I started representing in the junior competitions, started representing the state, and then representing Sydney for an adults. I never represented Australia in the adults, but I represented Sydney. So it just sort of came out of nowhere, and it was really the social side, but it was the ultimate puzzle. Chess is the ultimate puzzle.
And what are some of the similarities between chess and the business world?
It's funny, when I went into finance, particularly as a chess player, chess is quite deterministic. If you don't make a mistake, you won't lose. But if you can do the right thing in finance and in business, and you can still lose money. There's a randomness in it. I don't know if you play backgammon, but business is almost more like backgammon, and so is finance. Is almost more like backgammon. You can think 4 or 5 moves ahead in chess, but you can't always do that in business. Because the world doesn't react how you've got to test a product. You don't always know if there's going to be demand, and how many steps forward can you go. But there's no randomness in chess. But in business, there's so much randomness. So I had to. It was funny when I went into finance as a sort of taking views on currencies and commodities and interest rates. I had to unlearn a bit of what I'd learned about chess. Because if you lose at chess, you go, where did I make a mistake? But you could take a position in the financial markets and lose money, but you might have had it might have been the right decision, that over time, that sort of will make you money. Do you see the difference? So one is random, the other one is not random. So in a way, chess sort of taught me discipline, but as a way of thinking, you almost have to unlearn it for business and for finance, oddly enough.
Fair enough, and thank you so much for making that comparison. Now, when I grew up, I'm 30 now, but when I grew up, I remember watching you on Dragon's Den.
All right, yes, yeah.
So I was growing up. So I just want to ask you, how did you come to join Dragon's Den?
I was picked for Dragon's Den. I think I started a private members club in London, which was a restoration of a beautiful building, and just near Oxford Street. And we were featured on a BBC show called Trouble at the Top, because it was a big restoration. It took 2 years to do, cost millions and millions. I owned half of it, but we were struggling to get it going. And even though it's a beautiful Georgian masterpiece, getting people to come was very difficult. And so they featured us on that TV show. I'd also done some financial TV, just commenting on markets and things like that. So the BBC were aware of me. They interviewed me for the very beginning of Dragon's Den, but they chose, must have been Simon Woodruff, I think, and then Doug Richard. But anyway, I replaced him and went on for the second and third series. And
what did you enjoy most about being on the show?
It's only ever good. It's only ever good being on Dragon's Den. I mean, the doors that opened. You meet a lot of people. I was offered a lot of TV off the back of it, which I didn't really want to be a TV personality. I always had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Wasn't always sure that I deserved to be there. Because there's some very smart business people out there, and sometimes also when a contestant comes onto the show, it's quite hard for anyone to give them advice. If someone owns a restaurant and they want to, they know almost more about their business than you can possibly. But I really enjoyed being on it, and it opened up. I've met prime ministers, I've met sports stars, I've met celebrities, I've become friends with different people like that. So and all the feedback from the show was very positive. So I never really had any bad, any trolls or any, because you're trying to help people. At least that was my attitude.
And just quickly, you talked about some of the celebrities you've met. I mean, you're a big celebrity in your own right, but what are some of the other celebrities that you've met?
Oh, I'm not here to name drop, but I've met prime ministers. I spent a one-on-one with Tony Blair, which was fascinating. For about 15 minutes, had a long chat to him, which was quite fun in a way, because I knew I was going to meet him, and I didn't want to just ask. A bit like when you're doing a podcast, So I knew that his father had been a lecturer of law at Adelaide in Australia, so I was asking about that, about being an Australian, and he was also had a role in the Middle East, and there was one point where they were figure out where to put Israel, and at one point it was going to be put in. The one idea was to put it in Australia, and I was saying, wouldn't it have been a lot easier? Maybe I don't want to get involved in that, but would it have been a lot easier if it was in Australia? Would have loved to have all those Nobel Prize winners and everything else, and it would have created less problems for Palestine. So it's a simple solution. But if it had been stuck in the outback of Australia somewhere, Australia would probably be very happy. So so it was a very flippant conversation. But the difference between him and Gordon Brown, I met Gordon Brown as well, had one-on-one with him, and they couldn't be more different. Obviously both very bright, talented people, but Tony Blair, he really is that sort of Bill Clinton sort of person. Like, you are the most important person. Doesn't take his eyes off you. And whereas Gordon Brown, he kind of looks at the floor. He's much more, maybe more introverted, but still has a lot to say. And actually, funnily enough, I heard him speak the other night, and he, I'm probably more centre right than centre left, but I thought everything he said was making a lot of sense. I found him a very credible speaker, and I thought he spoke a lot better than when he was Prime Minister, maybe having the pressure off him. But people like that, I've met sports stars, and you just meet. And scientists, scientists that you wouldn't know about, people, because you've been on Dragon's Den, people will talk to you. It's a kind of a calling card. So if you say, I've been on that show, they're like, oh yeah. So it's an easy way to get to meet people, or at least for them to identify who you are and what you do. and people who rightly or wrongly suddenly think you're a business guru. So
And you're also actually one of the dragons I remember the most, and I'll also tell you why, because I remember Levi Roots' pitch, the reggae sauce pitch. So, and I remember that it was you and Peter Jones that invested in Levi Roots. So what was it about that pitch that made you invest in Levi Roots?
Well, it's very funny actually, because he came on and he had his guitar and he was singing, put some music in your food for me, I got some reggae sauce, and I think, on the show that the BBC have put on some contestants which I just expect to be thrown off, which is just part of the fun. And I think Levi, pretty sure Levi was just sort of showing up there with his guitar. We have a bit of a laugh. Thanks, Levi. Nice idea, sauce. So I don't think the BBC expected him to get an investment, but he was waving around an order, saying he'd had, I can't remember what the figure was, but he had this big order, and when for his sauce from a big supermarket or something, and I just remember, because I'm used to the metric system being Australian, and he was talking in litres, and I'm thinking, this is like nearly a litre per person in the United Kingdom. This order cannot be right. And so he was out by a factor of 1,000 to 1 on his numbers, and I caught him on that. And normally when you catch out someone on Dragon's Den, it's a real TV moment. They start to perspire or they start to shake. They know they've been caught out. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing, isn't it, to be out 1,000 to 1 on your numbers. So normally a mistake like that is just terminal for that contestant. And he just sort of looked at me and he goes, "Oh yeah, fair enough." I said, "I think you're out by 1,000 to 1 in your numbers." And he looked at me and he's like, "Oh yeah. Any other questions?" And I thought, holy dooly, this guy is so. And then someone asked him, how did he get a cool name like Levi Roots? And he goes, "Well, actually it's Keith Graham, but I just prefer Levi Roots." So I'm thinking, how cool is this guy? And I was looking at my notepad the other day, and on my notepad I wrote down, he is a product. This guy is a product, because you can. They've got a sauce in front of you. You can try 10 different sauces. How do you really know? You're sitting there on a TV set. How can you really, TV studio? How can you really identify? You want to do like a wine tasting. You want to, have all of them lined up. You want to have a bit of research about how much, if you wanted to really invest in something like that. But I just thought the sauce seemed okay to me. But the guy, I just thought everyone's going to love Levi, which was right. And so that's what, and I've got it on my pad. He is a product, therefore invest. I've literally written on my pad. I looked it back from all those, those years ago, and then I went along, and then Peter he was umming and ahhing, but he jumped in once he saw that I was going to do something. But what you do then is when what you typically do when you've got more than one dragon investing in something. It doesn't make sense for both of you to pursue it. You get one person, because then you've got to go to contract and you've got to get the investment sorted, and so it makes sense. So for Peter did that one. Peter did Levi, reggae sauce, and he's always the one. It's always Peter, and I'm struggling to mention half the time, even though I don't think he would have invested if I hadn't. Whereas I did an egg cooker, which didn't take off. So I invested with Peter into an egg cooker, which didn't take off. So I got the egg cooker, he got the sauce. We both invested in both of them, but he ran with the sauce and I ran with the egg cooker.
And what is your relationship like with Levi today?
It's great. It's funny you ask that, because I spoke to him. I don't have a lot of. I sold out. I don't know when, 2008, 2009, maybe 2010. I don't know. Just at that time, it was a very difficult time in business. If you remember, in the 2008, everything was collapsing, and Levi, that sauce was going quite well. So I thought, oh well, I've done pretty well here. So I said, so I sold. I think the company bought my shares back, so I sold out. But so I haven't had a lot of need to speak to Levi, even though we sort of get on very well. But I called him the other day just to say hi. So we had a really good laugh, and about, because I hadn't really sat down with him since then and talked about how he felt when he was out by his numbers, and how he wanted to know how I felt, and so, and he's a charming guy, and I'm so happy for him that he's done so well out of it.
Thank you. And it's also, you invested in different things on Dragon's Den, and you did different types of shows, 2 seasons. What were some of your best memories on the show, and why?
Well, that's probably the best one, just because it changed people's lives. And every time you go in and see a sauce in the supermarket, or you see Levi in the newspapers or wherever giving a talk, coming on your show. So that's probably the biggest one. But I think, you know, the show was very big when I was on it. So, you know, we got nominated for 2 BAFTAs. We got nominated each time for a BAFTA, and I don't know if it's happened since then. I don't know. I think we're the highest viewing figures, or, you know, so I'm just having a little, you know. But, you know, what I liked about the show and being part of it was that it really is an educational show, and you know, I'm like, was what you'd call a business angel. I was doing those sort of deals, and I'm like, so when I watched the first season, which I wasn't on, it was true in the sense that that's what I do in my life. You know, this is, and people don't know that. People don't know what it's, you know. So it was very, you know, people were learning about, you know, first mover advantage, you know, profit margins, you know, barriers to entry, you know, things like that. They were learning all these business concepts almost as part of entertainment, you know, and I thought that's as good as doing a university course on starting, you know, investing in businesses or backing businesses or starting businesses. So I was really happy to be part of something which I thought was educational while being entertaining, but it was educational in a business sense. And also the demographic of the show is fantastic, like, you know, the split between older and younger, the split between men and women, you know, wealthy and not wealthy, you know, successful, you know, it was a very broad demographic. So I thought I was really happy about that, and you know, the number of people that have been contacted, you know, I think I must have had like 15,000 emails from being on the show, you know, but the diversity of people that I hear from, you know, and so I think it has been an educational. I think I have contributed a little way to educating other people, you know, in that, which is nice.
And why did you leave Dragons then?
I got kicked off.
Oh wow.
Kicked off is a nasty way of saying it. Well, there was speculation that they wanted to racially rebalance the show because apparently I was apparently I was the most popular dragon on.
You were pretty popular.
But I was an Australian living in Monaco at that point. So I didn't really know why I was on it in the first place. So I didn't mind, but I think that the story in the papers was that they wanted to racially rebalance it, which is fine by me. Was very happy to do 2 series of it. So I've no gripe with the BBC. And, you know, also they wanted me to do to expand into other TV, which is, they sort of wanted me to become a bit of a product, a BBC product, and I didn't see myself doing that. So I didn't want to go on, you know, Jungle, get me out of here, and, you know, dancing, you know, or baking. I'm not very good at any of those things. So, you know, who knows what the reason was. But, you know, they do rotate. So, you know, maybe I was just part of the rotation.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because when I was actually reading through the comments on one of my Nick Jenkins shorts, your name kept coming up. So we remember 2 nice dragons, Nick Jenkins and Richard Fraleigh.
Oh, right.
And it's like, I was just wondering because when I see some of the most watched Dragons Den clips, you're on some of them. So I was just wondering why. But it's really interesting. You say that if you got the opportunity to go back to Dragons Den, would you take the opportunity to return?
To return? Yeah, I think so. You know, I'd probably be. You know, I used to get so many emails, people thinking I was like came from an advantaged background. As we've talked about, I came from the care system. You know, I'd be more telling them at the beginning, I think they had me driving a car, and when I lived in Monaco, I'd be now like, tell the world that I'm from the care system, tell the world that I've got a good, you know, university degrees. You know, there's nothing wrong with being educated. It's not necessary, but there's nothing to be embarrassed about. But tell the world that, you know, tell the world that I'm a nerd and play chess. You know, you know, they've made out that, you know, so I'd be like, no, it's okay. You know, it's okay to be from the care system. So I'd probably be pushing that side a bit more. But at the time, I was a bit, you know, let them present me as some posh kid from Sydney, which is not really right. But I think they missed a trick.
Yeah.
You know, I think they could have pointed out that I was from the care system. You know, so.
Yeah.
And that I played chess, you know, played in a couple of chess Olympics and stuff. You know, what's wrong with that? And they didn't mention that. So I'm just like, what, you know. So, yeah, and, you know, the world's changed. But, you know, that would, you know, if I can help any other kids who've gone through the care system, that'd be great. So why not mention it?
And, you know, you talked about how you were being pushed into other television, and I can believe that. because of your popularity. But if there was one TV show you could star in, it can be business, any TV show, what would it be?
I wish I'd been prepared for that question. That's a tough one. Probably be something on the business side, or or maybe. Yeah, it probably would have to be something on the business side. As I say, I can't bake and I can't dance, so I'd have to. And I'm not a fast driver. It wouldn't be, Top Gear. So I think I'm pretty limited. I think maybe commenting on social affairs. Because I was an economist, maybe commenting on social affairs or economics or something. Or sometimes I go on breakfast TV. I get called up to comment, and I don't know what view they have of me, because the last time I commented was the question was, is it okay to fart in the workplace? So I must be, so I was on there 3 minutes talking about whether it's a flippant, it's not a serious subject, but they get me on for anything that's kind of fun. So that's kind of fun, talking like that. We can have a laugh, but also, but so maybe political commentary, or I've got some strong views on that sometimes, or on helping businesses, what the government could do for businesses.
That's brilliant. And also just just drawing upon your life just a little bit more. You own a private members club. I was actually reading in the newspaper. Yes, you own a private members club, Home House?
Home House, yeah, we sold. I owned half of it.
Oh, we sold it.
We sold, yeah, as well, yeah. Unfortunately, it was a bit of the same sort of thing. Just, because business is so cyclical, and sometimes when you do what I do, you need to cash. You need to cash out or something. So unfortunately, I had to sell out. So I'm still a life member, ambassador, and go there a lot. But no, we sold out for a good price a few years ago. So so my toys are gone. My sauce is gone. My private members club is gone. But it'll be there we restored the building. It's a 200 plus year old building. It'll be there hopefully for another 300 years or whatever. And because of us restoring it, otherwise it might have been dilapidated.
Oh wow! And just at the back there, we got your books. So
we
got your 2 books. We got Humble Stumbles, and we got Ricky Means Business.
Yeah.
Can you just talk our audience just through those 2 books? I know that they're going to be released very soon, or they've been released.
They're out now on Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote a different book about 20 years ago about finance, and it was 100 strategies in finance, all the things I used to do when I ran a hedge fund, and that did very, very well. So I wanted to write a similar type book for business. And as I say, business is different. In some ways, business is harder than finance was. There's so many things can happen in business. If you take a position on interest rates, either it goes up or down. But you can be wrong. There's a certain number of things you can be wrong. And if you get a surprise, like inflation is higher than you expect, there's not the range of surprises in finance is way less than the range of surprises in business. The things that have happened in business you would never guess. And unfortunately the surprises in business are normally bad. So business is always like dealing with crazy stuff that happens to you. I had a company that that used to scan for chicken nuggets, for bones. So that all the chicken nuggets come along a conveyor belt, and a bit like a pinball machine. If one had bone in it, it'd sort of flick it out to because you can't have bones in your nuggets. But we were in a competitive situation with one of our machines, which are like $1 million each. Went to the US, and unfortunately they dropped it. As it was getting off the truck, and we were insured, so that was not a financial hit. But we lost our spot in that competitive, and that was a big order to supply eventually to, I think it was McDonald's, and we lost that. So and who would put that in a business plan? Anyway, surprises in business are normally bad, unfortunately, and all sorts of things happen. The personal side of business, dealing with managers, and marketing is a very personal. Trying to guess where the market's going, trying to guess competitors. So business stories can be a lot of fun. So having had 120 businesses, I've written the strategies in the book, which I've learned from those 120 businesses. It's quite hard to come up with strategies, but I've come up with nearly 50. So there's 50 strategies in there. But there's a lot of stories, a lot of, and they're the most interesting stories I've got from 120 businesses. Some successes, some failures. And it's also got soul searching in there, for how you feel when you've got success or failure, and things like going through the care system, or things like playing chess and what you learn from chess, stuff like that, just random observations. But that book, Humble Stumbles, so it's called Humble Stumbles because, I've had successes in business, but I haven't had like a Spotify or an Uber. I haven't had a household name. I invested in Net-a-Porter. I was a seed investor in Net-a-Porter, but not a huge, stake. So I haven't had a smash hit. So it's sort of stumbled around, So it's Humble Stumbles because business is humbling. And that took about 12 years to write. On the back of that, I finished that just recently when I was in Bali. And so at the same time, I wanted to create a simple story, a very simple story, but an entertaining story for young adults about business. So Ricky means business, is about Ricky who leaves school at the age of 17. Now, I've written it so Ricky is not a boy or a girl, not for any particular reason, not for any woke reason, but just because I've got a daughter as well as sons, so it's written for boys or girls. So Ricky leaves school and doesn't know what to do. Can go to university, but what are going to? So Ricky decides to start a business, and then has ups and downs, makes mistakes. Every mistake Ricky made, by the way, I have made, right? So some of them just go, no one would do that. Yes, I've done that. So Ricky makes mistakes, gets excited, has success, but every chapter is a little lesson. So it's a bit like Aesop's fables or the Greek mythology, something like that. So I wanted to make it simple, but you still do, the readers do get engaged with Ricky and feel for Ricky. And there's a lot of other characters in there who give advice to Ricky. So it's a nice story, and it only took a month to write, but it was based on all the stuff out of Humble Stumbles. So all the mistakes and lessons, I thought I can put these into a story, and I always wanted to write fiction. So that's got a good response. It's got a very good response, and from older people as well. Like I wrote it for sort of teenagers, 15 plus sort of thing, but adults, it's a quick, it only takes. It's only 100 pages or something, so it doesn't take long for adults to read either. And as I say, I've made all those mistakes, so there's some good lessons in there. Market segmentation, dealing with extreme competition, staff problems, all that kind of manufacturer problems, So it's fun. It's a fun book.
And what drives you now? Because you're very successful, in what you've achieved. But I remember reading in one of your interviews, I think it was either with the Times or the Metro, where you said you never imagined yourself stopping. What continues to drive you now?
I think I'm still motivated by changing people's lives. I know that sounds, for the business side, the motivation is, with Home House, the private members club I started, which wouldn't have existed without me. It just wouldn't have. There was a crunch point where I had to say yes or no. And Prince Charles, King Charles, came to the opening, So for a few hours, I changed his life. Bill Clinton came. Madonna stayed there. I've changed their life, and also because that's around for hundreds of years more, you think I've changed. And even Levi Rich changing his life. Obviously, you want to make money, right? So I'm not operating business as a charity, but change Levi's life, and I love it when a business is a success and the manager, it sort of almost changes their life more than mine. But also, all those people enjoying the sauce, so I get a buzz out of when I go into the, just see them in the supermarket, and I'm like, that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for me. So that's kind of a nice buzz, I don't know what we're on this planet for, but that's a kind of fun thing, isn't it? So sort of a legacy. But changing people's lives is fun, and also just figuring it out. How you can get a product to succeed despite all the randomness and the difficulties.
I think what you said is really powerful, because I've interviewed lots of different entrepreneurs, and very few people have given me the answer you have about changing people's lives. So I just want to ask you about just like your values and who you are, because when I speak to some entrepreneurs, it's all about money. It's about getting the biggest deal or making the most millions. What values drive your approach to business?
I don't really understand that. How people can make it about money, because if it's not fun, if you're not enjoying it, it's really hard. Even if you're struggling to feed yourself, trying to do business just for money, like the stress would be, I don't think that's a good way to approach it. I think you have to, because it's naturally a risky thing to do. Maybe it's riskier than some people realize, when they go into business. But 9 out of 10 is sort of the accepted failure rate. So if you need to make money, that's a tough way to do it. It's a bit like relying on buying a lottery ticket or a scratchy or something to make money. So, and I don't think it's very fulfilling. So I think obviously some people are in that difficult situation where they have to work is all about money. But I can't imagine doing anything. Can you? Just for money? I mean, the money side is nice if it's successful, but you often lose money. I often lose money, so I have to be ready for that. So no, it's not about money. I think it'd be easier. I was probably better hedge fund manager than I am at business, so it would have been easier to do that. Or I could just go and sit on a beach, because I'm not that. I think one benefit of being working class is that I don't really care if I'm driving a bit of a beat up old car, if I'm driving a fancy new BMW. I don't really care. Like doesn't really bother me. I mean, my friends, they probably wouldn't mind what I drove. I've got plenty of friends, my family. So as long as you've got enough to feed yourself. So after that point, money as a motivator, I don't think it's a very good motivator.
Thank you. I think that was really powerful and kind of sets everything into perspective. I would also just like to also ask you is what advice would you give to entrepreneurs that want to be successful in today's climate?
Yeah, well, it's I think we touched on it earlier. That I think the one ingredient for success in business is motivation. So I don't know any other ingredient which is necessary. You can be young, old, you can be male, female, you can be educated, uneducated, you can come from a wealthy background or poorer background. Obviously people have advantages, but the one thing, I've never met a successful entrepreneur who's not motivated, and you touched on it before, drive. So if you're lazy, I said it to one of my kids the other day, like it's like shower time, or when you're just walking down the street doing on your way somewhere, what are you thinking about? If you're in the shower, what are you thinking about? And I'm often thinking about business. Oh, we could try that, and that's probably necessary. If you just, as we talked about a minute ago, if you're just doing it for money, then I don't think you succeed, because you have to, before you fall asleep, oh, that's an idea. You wake up in the middle of the night, oh, that's an idea. You have to have a real passion for it. So I would say that would be the first thing. Ask yourself, do you have the passion? Then there's sort of basic advice, which I've got I'm pointing at my book, but in the strategies, from my book, businesses tend to, in business, kind of have disruption, discovery, and defense are the three things that I keep coming back to. And I talk a lot about in the book. So if you had a business idea or you have a small business, how disruptive is it? And I don't like the term unique selling point, because a business can also disrupt on price. So if I was selling, a glass of this, I could disrupt by having a different tasting one, or I could just have this exactly the same but do it at a lower price. So that's not really a unique selling point, but you're disrupting by a price or product. So you're almost disrupting with imitation or with innovation. So you measure how much you're going to disrupt a market. I mean, you could take an idea from the US and try it in London or Manchester. So it's not even a unique selling point in a way. What you are doing is you're imitating, but you're offering it in a different marketplace. Mm-hmm. So that's disruptive. So you measure how disruptive am I going to be, and how do I maximize that disruption? And then discovery, which is probably the least focused on in my mind, is when people start a business, it's all about how long you find out if your idea is viable. If you accept that an idea, there's randomness that you don't really know. You can ask two experts to tell you if this is going to sell or not, and you get two answers. The only way really is to do it like a research project. Start the business, do it as well as you can, and find out as quickly as you can, spending the least amount of money that you can to find out if you can sell these things. So and typically business is a bit like a house renovation. It ends up taking twice as long, costing twice as much. So that's normally what happens. So normally every business seems to do that, like every house renovation seems to do that. So be prepared that it's going to take longer and cost more. So you need to budget accordingly. So the first, and I sort of say the first year is a research project, or the first stage is a research project. That it's a discovery, just discovering if there's demand, because no one can tell you if there's demand for an idea. So sometimes you think there would be or there wouldn't be, but yeah. So that discovery, and also the discovery cost. How much is it going to cost to find out? So if you've got a lemonade, like if I was just wanted to sell lemonade down at the park, in a lemonade stand, that doesn't cost much. I can go down there. So my discovery cost and my discovery period is pretty low. I can know in one day, it cost me, a tenner to buy some lemons or something and go and sit there. And pretty quickly I know if I can sell lemonade or not. Rather than just sitting here going, would it work or not? I can try and find out. Whereas if I opened a restaurant, that's going to probably cost hundreds of thousands, just a basic restaurant. You've got to get the lease, you've got to get the fitted out, you've got to have the kitchen, and you've got to have you've got to hire the staff before you even open. You've got to have have food inventory, print menus, all that kind of stuff before you even start. So the discovery cost is way higher than it is for a lemonade stand, and probably take you a bit longer to get the restaurant going than you thought. Then you got to have money for social media or whatever else. So what's the discovery cost? Is it sometimes. So that being aware of your discovery costs and having a plan B if it takes you longer. So if you open your restaurant, you put in 100,000 into your restaurant, you open it up, and it's taking longer to get it going. You'll get. And I've seen people get to this point like, do I continue? Do I continue? And this happens to Ricky in Ricky Means Business. Do I continue or do I call it quits? Do I put some more money or am I just wasting money? I never expected to put more money into this. So be aware that may well happen, and try to spend the minimum to find out, find out about the idea. So what that means is, if you don't need to get an office and print fancy business cards and all that kind of stuff, don't do it. Save the money. Just find out as quickly as possible if there's demand for your. That's why pop-ups say are brilliant for some things, because it's just a quick way of finding out, is there demand for that type of shop, and so something like that. So being aware of your discovery cost and what your plan will be if it takes longer to discover. And then finally, I have defense, which is, and I like this example, it's in the book. You let's say you decide, there's a market for vegetarian hamburgers, and you get all the effort and you prove, there is a market for vegetarian hamburgers, and you set up your little shop, people are buying your vegetarian hamburgers. McDonald's looks over their shoulder and go, oh, that's a good idea. Start selling vegetarian hamburgers. You're a bust. So a good idea. So how do you defend it? And patents are overrated. This is all complicated subjects, but patents are overrated. NDAs are overrated. Often it's just know-how. So defense is something. So those three things: how disruptive, how expensive is it, and how long does it take to discover, and can you defend your idea? So that's kind of my nutshell business advice.
That's brilliant. And what resources would you utilize now in business that weren't available when you started business?
Well, when we started Home House Private Members Club, it's beautiful restoration of a Georgian masterpiece. It is stunning. It's like a Palace of Versailles, just near Oxford Street. And when we opened it, we were trying to get articles in magazines, pictures in magazines. No one knew about these fantastic bedrooms we had. Like, how do you tell? Like now, it would be all out. In a week of that on Instagram, social media, that would be out there. So it's just changed completely. And I've been going on social media a little bit lately to promote my books. And going on TikTok, and my kids who are in their 20s are helping me. It's a dark art to me. So that's just completely new, and it's a real skill. And it's changing almost every day. I was reading something where you can do a post, and if you're doing a TikTok post, you want to look at this. You want to look at the camera. And someone showed me this app the other day, for example, where you can read like this, which is a lot easier, but it will move. It'll show your eyes just looking at the screen, so you can give. So anyway, but that's a brand new. And that's the world now, is dealing with social media and maximizing yourself on social media, and of course AI, which is, if you're starting an accounting firm, is AI just going to be the ultimate competition and wipe you out? So that's obviously new. Or using AI, hiring people who understand AI, whether it's in your industry or not. So I'd say those things are big: social media and artificial intelligence.
Thank you. If you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Don't beat yourself up when you get it wrong. Enjoy the ride. Don't listen too much to other people. I had people who helped me a lot, but also had people who would give you, dismiss you a little bit. So you'd probably give myself encouragement. Particularly younger me when I was going through the care system. I felt very lonely. So obviously I'd wrap an arm around my shoulders and say it'll be all right. Yeah, but I don't really think about regrets that much. I've got so many businesses wrong. But you can't really beat yourself up, can you? So it would have been to not sell Reggae Source shares. Although I'm sure there's been some things on Dragon's Den. Sometimes you see things that come on Dragon's Den. The Dragons didn't invest in it. But how do you know? Can you assess a raw idea? Do you know Trunky?
Oh no, I'm not too sure.
Suitcases. They're pull-along suitcases for kids.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, but you see them all over the airport. They're very colourful for young kids, say 6, 7, and younger. And that was on Dragon's Den. Oh, and I tried to invest, but he didn't accept my offer. And then it just became every airport you go to, you'll see someone pulling a Trunky along. So I always go, why didn't I offer him more? But so.
And the last question I'd like to ask you is, please tell us about any other ventures you're working on this year, any projects.
Well, I finished my books. I'm now promoting those. Talking to you, but also like what you're doing. People who haven't done it before. You remind me of you're a younger, not younger version of me, but you kind of, I appreciate people that are trying, doing things like you are. But I have a couple of companies now which I'm spending a lot of time on. One is they both use AI, funnily enough, but one's been around forever. Before AI was even AI. We do radiation detection. It's called innovative physics, and we're doing some great stuff in Japan around Fukushima with the Japanese government. There's that nuclear disaster there with the reactors. We're doing some good stuff there, and then I've got another one here which I sort of found, seed investor, and I'm on the board, called Adaga, which is does AI, turns unstructured data into structured data, so analyzes data for government agencies. They sound quite dry, but actually they're very they're very exciting, both of them.
I think that innovative physics, because I remember going on your LinkedIn page and I actually saw innovative physics. I actually thought it was a science company. Yeah, because of the physics.
Yes. Well, it is really. It's got a lot of physicists. Mm-hmm. It's on the Isle of Wight, about 20 people. Okay. And we got that Japanese contracts. We weren't the first people they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So they found us on the Isle of Wight. After much bigger companies failed at what we do for them. So that was exciting. Yes. But it is a bit of a science company. It really is scientific. A bunch of physicists.
Wow, thank you so much just for coming on my platform, being such a great guest.
Thank you.
Really love the answers, so thank you so much.
Enjoyed it, yes, and good luck with the other guests. Thank you.